Hello all, welcome to the new Simply Put series by Kalamais Academy. This is Priyanka Mahapatra, faculty at Kalamais. So today we'll be having a discussion on the newspaper dated 2nd of February 2024. So basically we would be discussing the interim budget 2024-25 in this discussion. So we all know the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, she has presented the Union budget for the next financial year 2024-25, and thus it was her sixth budget presentation. And this sixth budget presentation by her is different from all others because this was an interim budget, and thus making her the second finance minister to present six consecutive budgets after Morarji Desai. So this becomes very important fact for your prelims examination. So the full budget for the fiscal year 2024-25 will be introduced in the month of July after the formation of the new government following the general elections, because this is an election year. So first let's come to what is Union Budget. Union Budget is the annual financial statement with the estimated cost and expenses. Okay, so this will be having both the cost and the expenses of the government for the following fiscal year, for the following financial year. And what is interim budget 2024? So interim budget is actually a budget in the election year. So it is otherwise known as vote on account budget, which will allow the government to meet the short-term expenses. So this will basically outline the government's anticipated receipts and expenditures until the new government is formed. And in contrast, the comprehensive budget, it will have all facets of government finances, including earnings, spending, allocations, and policy declarations as well. Right? So this is the main difference between the interim budget and the comprehensive full budget. You should be knowing from your exam point of view. So here we need to understand two things, that is budget estimates and the revised estimates, as you see over here, BE and RE. So budget estimates is a futuristic version. In the coming year, what kind of expenses are we expecting in that space? For example, health, education, that is announced. Okay, but in revised estimates, after the expenses happen, there is an estimate done that how much really we have done the expenses. Okay, that is called as the revised estimates. So budget estimates, they are likely to change, but revised estimates, they are the final ones. Okay, so it is better to focus on the revised estimates of the current fiscal year because they present a complete picture of the past 5 to 10 years, right? So here in this budget we have seen a trimming of allocations both in the social sector, health, education sector, and also in the major schemes that we are going to discuss in the further slide. So then we come to the fiscal deficit. So what is fiscal deficit? It is the amount of money that the government borrows from the market. And why does it borrow from the market? In order to bridge the gap between the expenses and the income. Every time the income is not surplus, to cover up the expenses. So to bridge the gap between the expenses and the income, the government needs to borrow from the market. And if a government borrows more from the market, then it leaves a very small amount of money for the private sector to borrow from. Okay, so there is a constant pool of money in the market, and if the government is borrowing more, then it leaves a very small amount of money for the private sector to borrow. And that leads to a situation where we have higher interest rate. Okay, and higher interest rate again, it de-incentivizes the borrowing by the private sector, and hence the economic activity is dragged down in the form of lower consumption and production. Okay, so you understand the concerns related to the higher fiscal debt. Again, a scenario where the government tries to print more money. It says that no, I'll not borrow from the market because that leaves very less amount for the private sector to borrow from the market. I'll print more money. So if the government tries to print more money, then there is also an issue because that leads to inflation. Because if government tries to print more money, then more money is in the market, it comes to the market, and it then leads to inflationary situation. And thus, if the government is not trying to increase its income, then the government debt is increasing year on year. That is leading to higher fiscal deficit. That is leading to higher debt. And to cover up the old debt, the government will try to tax its citizens, right? So if it taxes its citizens, then the citizens will have less disposable income in their hand, and that will drag down the economic activity. So this is how the whole economy is working. So hope we are clear now. And thus the deficit, recently it has worsened in the wake of COVID pandemic. Here you can see in the graph that how in 2021 the fiscal deficit is in the worst scenario. Okay, it was 9.2 of the GDP, but thereafter it has decreased. Okay, therefore we are more concerned about sticking to the FRBM Act, so otherwise known as the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. So this act, it seeks the government to contain its fiscal deficit, because it is very important to contain the fiscal deficit. Otherwise, the economy will collapse. We know now the side effects of increased fiscal deficit that we just understood. Okay, so this act, it is mandating the government to contain its fiscal deficit to just 3%. Very, very important fact to remember. Again, it is also important to remember that it is 3% of the nominal GDP. Okay, it is not 3% of the real GDP, it is nominal GDP. So here you have to remember that for all the budget related work, it is a nominal GDP that is always used. Okay, so here comes an important question, that what is nominal GDP and what is real GDP? So nominal GDP, it involves the effect of inflation, and the real GDP, it is derived from the nominal GDP by negating the effect of the inflation. For example, if the nominal GDP is 12% and if the inflation is 4%, then the real GDP is 8%. Right? So for all the budget related work, we need to take care of the inflation as well. That is why the inflation is taken into account and in the form of nominal GDP. Please remember this fact. Then coming to the Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. So India has actually never met this target of sticking to 3% barring 1 year, that is 2007-8. Very, very important fact to remember for your prelims this year. Okay, similarly in the current year, we have set a target of 5.9%. Okay, we had set that, but the revised estimate, that is the real thing, okay, that is a better focused thing, because after the expenses are done, this is the real estimate that we have come to, that it says it is 5.8% of the GDP. So the fiscal deficit is actually 5.8% of the GDP this year. But for the coming year, we have set some ambitious target, that is to come to 5.1% of the GDP, and in financial year 2026 we have to come to 4.5% of GDP, which is a very good thing, that the government is trying to come to 3% gradually. Right? Then we come to the capital expenditure. So here the interim budget 2024 is saying that the capital expenditure target is not met in the current year, because it stands at 9.5 lakh crore, and which was announced last year that the capital expenditure would be around 10 lakh crore. So we have not met this target of capital expenditures. So let's now understand what is capital expenditure. So all the government expenditure can be divided into two categories, as you know from your economy classes. First is the revenue expenditure and second is the capital expenditure. So there are two categories of expenses by the government. So the first is revenue expenditure. As the name suggests, it is to meet the daily needs, which is very volatile, which is very short term. Okay. So for example, salaries, fuel bills. In contrary to the revenue expenditure, there is capital expenditure. So that is concerned with making productive assets. That is for the longer term. For example, building roads, schools, bridges, then ports. Okay. So capital expenditure is of greater advantage. It has clear advantage for the broader economic stability. For example, here you need to remember this fact, that every 100 rupees spent on capital expenditure leads to a 250 rupees increase in GDP. Very, very important fact to remember. You can directly quote in your mains answer. But the revenue expenditure returns less than ₹100 rupees. Okay, so this is the comparison. This is the outcome of the revenue expenses and the capital expenses. And fortunately, this government is more concerned about increased or enhanced capital expenditure. Okay, we have repeatedly seen that how this government is more concerned about increasing the capital expenditure for this reason, because it has got more returns. Then we come to the spends cut seen in the social welfare sector, in the health and the education sector. Historically, in India, budget allocations towards the social welfare sector like health and the education has been very low, has been lower than required. It has been in the range of 2.5% to 1.5% only of the total government expenditure. And with this low government expenditure also, we have not met the targets in the current financial year. Okay, for example, in the area of health, there was a target to spend around 1,16,417 crore, but now we have only spent around 1,08,878 crore. Similarly, in case of education, we had an estimate that we would be spending around 88,956 crore, but we have only spent around 79,221 crores. Okay, so the small targets have also been not met in the current financial year. Then we have seen a cut in the core schemes. So core of the core schemes, they have also witnessed cuts. So what is core of the core schemes? So these are schemes which are meant for the most disadvantaged sections of the society, for example, SC, ST and minorities. Here also the revised estimates say that we have spent less. Okay, the umbrella scheme for the development of scheduled caste, the revised estimates say that we have spent only 6,780 crores against the budget estimate of 9,409 crores. Then comes housing. So this time the government has taken care of the middle class citizens who are living in the rented houses, slums or chawls or unauthorized colonies to have their own houses, to buy or build their own houses. There will be a scheme. Then comes the rooftop solarization. 1 crore households will be enabled to obtain up to 300 units free electricity every month. So these points are very, very important from your housing perspective or from your renewable energy perspective if any question comes in your mains answers. So you are required to note these very small details of the budget in your respective notes, so that while answer writing, you include these points from the budget in your answer so that you get those very creamy marks, okay, very rewarding marks, right? Then comes to the PM Awas Yojana Gramin. So 2 crore more houses will be taken up in the next 5 years to meet the requirement arising from the increased number of families. Then comes health. So this time we have taken care of the cervical cancer. So for the prevention of the cervical cancer, vaccination of the adolescent girls is going to happen between the age group of 9 to 14 years. And why they are given to adolescent girls in case of cervical cancer, that we have already discussed in a previous discussion. You can go there and watch, right? Then the government also plans to set up more medical colleges in order to accentuate, in order to utilize the existing hospital infrastructure, right? Then there is a upgradation of the Anganwadi centers also under Saksham Anganwadi and Poshan 2.0. Okay, then UWIN platform will be there to manage the immunization and the efforts under Mission Andradhanush. ठीक है. Then there will be an extension of the healthcare cover under Ayushman Bharat scheme to all the ASHA workers this time, Anganwadi workers and the helpers. ठीक है. So these are the details of the health sector. Then comes the agriculture sector. So here the government has talked about the application of the nano DAP on various crops, and that will be expanded to all the agroclimatic zones. So what is this nano DAP? This is more concerned about the application of nanotechnology in agriculture. Okay, so nano DAP and nano urea, they are very advanced version of the agricultural fertilizers. And why are we using nanotechnology in the fertilizers? Because to improve the nutrient efficiency, in order to reduce the environmental impact. Okay, and this DAP liquid is an efficient source of nitrogen and phosphorus, which is very much required for the plant growth. Then we come to the self-reliance that we are foreseeing in case of oil seeds, and we would be taking up more research and modern farming methods in order to bring Atmanirbharta or self-reliance for the oilseeds, so that we don't have to bear the import cost. And the focused oilseeds this time would be mustard, groundnut, sesame, soybean and sunflower. Then a comprehensive program will be there to support the dairy farmers also. and the guiding light will be the success story of the Rashtriya Gokul Mission, National Livestock Mission, and the infrastructure development funds for the dairy processing and the animal husbandry, because we have seen a huge success, and this will be our guiding light in order to formulate a program for the supporting of the dairy farmers. Then we come to the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, and this Yojana is concerned about enhancing the aquaculture productivity, and to enhance the aquaculture productivity from 3 tons per hectare to 5 tons per hectare. In this budget it has been announced. Okay, and then it was also saying to double the exports to 1 lakh crore, and also to generate 55 lakh employment opportunities. Then comes Namo Drone Didi scheme. So this scheme is very important from the woman empowerment point of view, and also from the agriculture point of view, where 500 crores have been allocated for the scheme, which will provide drones to 15,000 women SHGs, and they will be providing rental services to the farmers. Then aquaparks, 5 integrated aquaparks will be also set up. Then regarding women, the government is now aiming to enhance the target for Lakpati Didi from 2 crores to 3 crores. And the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, it has highlighted the momentum for the Nari Shakti. Okay, 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given already to the women entrepreneurs. So it is highlighting the momentum for the Nari Shakti, the woman empowerment. And 83 lakh SHGs, you need to remember this fact in order to answer any question related to the SHGs. You can directly write it as an introductory line in your SHG answers, which is there in your GS paper 2. So 83 lakh SHGs with 9 crore women, they are transforming the rural socio-economic landscape with empowerment and self-reliance. Then comes youth and technology for tech savvy youth. A corpus of rupees 1 lakh crore will be established with 50-year interest-free loan. Okay, and for strengthening the deep technologies for defense purposes, we have a scheme, and we also are focusing on the Atmanirbharta in this sector. Then comes the infrastructure development. So the outlay has been increased by 11.1%, and this comes to 11 lakh 11,111 crore rupees. That accounts to 3.4% of the GDP. Okay, so you need to remember these numbers in order to write it in your answers related to the infrastructure, which is there in your GS paper 3 syllabus. Then 3 major economic railway corridor program will be implemented. Okay, with respect to energy corridor, with respect to mineral corridor, with respect to cement corridor, and port connectivity corridors, high traffic density corridors. Okay, so these are the major economic railway corridor program that will be implemented this time. Then these corridors, they are identified under PM Gati Shakti in order to enable multimodal connectivity, in order to reduce the logistics cost, in order to increase the efficiency for the transportation, right? In order to increase the passenger satisfaction. Okay? Then there will be expansion of metro services as well, Namo Bharat. It will be supported in large cities, focusing on transit-oriented development. Then coming to the green energy, coming to the environment. So what has been done? First is that there will be a phased mandatory blending of compressed biogas. Okay. So blending of compressed biogas has been made mandatory this time for domestic purposes, and that will be blended in the compressed natural gas and the piped natural gas for domestic purposes. Okay. Then financial assistance has also been provided for the procurement of biogas aggregation machinery. Okay. Then coal gasification and liquefaction capacity of 100 metric tons will be set up by 2030. Then a viability VGF, viability gap funding, will be provided for harnessing offshore wind energy capacity. Then comes the EV ecosystem, the electric vehicle ecosystem, and how this budget has given a push to the charging infrastructure, because India is lacking in the charging infrastructure. Few days back we had a discussion in the New Simply Put series that how India has crossed 1 million EVs, but still we are having only 2,000 charging infrastructure. And this charging infrastructure is the biggest trigger point, is the biggest push for the rapid adoption of the EVs. The case study is China, how China is leading in the charging infrastructure and therefore it is leading in the ecosystem of electric vehicles, right? Then we come to the greater adoption of the e-buses for the public transport. Then for the green growth, we have taken care of the bio manufacturing and bio foundry. A new scheme for these will be launched. Then Blue Economy 2.0 has also found mention in this budget, where it is talking about restoration and adaptation measures, coastal aquaculture and mariculture. Okay, so these things will be integrated and a multi-sectoral approach will be launched in form of a scheme. Then we have shown commitment to achieve net zero by 2070. Then coming to the foreign direct investment. So here we have seen the golden era of the FDI inflow during the year 2014 to 23, and it has doubled up. It has become twice the inflow that was happening during the year 2005 to 14. So it has touched 596 billion US dollars. And to enhance more sustained foreign investment, we need to negotiate bilateral investment treaties, BIT, with the foreign partners in the spirit of first develop India. Then comes the indirect taxes. The tax base of GST, it has doubled, it has more than doubled in fact, and the average monthly GST collection has almost doubled to 1.66 lakh crores. Then comes the direct taxes. Direct taxes has also more than tripled. Okay, and the return filers, they have swelled to 2.4 times. And the corporate tax rate has been also decreased from 30% to 22% for the existing domestic companies and to 15% for the new manufacturing companies. Okay, and the age-old jurisdiction-based assessment system was transformed with the introduction of the faceless assessment and appeal, which is imparting greater efficiency, transparency, and accountability with respect to the direct taxes. Then there was the introduction of the updated income tax returns. New form was introduced, 26AS, which has made the filing of tax returns simpler and easier. For that, the average processing time of returns, it has reduced to just 10 days from 93 days in 2013-14 to 10 days this year, thereby making the refunds very fast. Now, just now we discussed that how the government has been able to contain its fiscal deficit and how it is optimistic to continue this trend in the coming years. How it is optimistic to contain its fiscal deficit in the coming years. Why? Because of the sharp increase in the tax revenues. So this is called tax buoyancy. Okay, so there has been a strong growth in the tax revenues, which is reflected in the case of in the form of high tax buoyancy, that is 1.2 as against 1.0 in the financial year 2023. Income tax revenues are seen exceeding the corporate tax collection. Corporate tax collection was by far the most important contributor to the direct taxes. But now we are seeing the surge of the income tax revenues because of the previously discussed reasons. Income tax, in fact, it has seen overshooting the budget estimate by 13.5%. Similarly, securities transaction tax revenue is seen exceeding the budget estimate by 15.8%. Okay, so this will help the center to align with its fiscal consolidation roadmap. And the target of achieving a fiscal deficit of 5.1% of GDP in the financial year 2025 will just be possible because of the tax buoyancy. And if the tax buoyancy continue to hold up, this is not an impossible task. Right? So over the past few years, the government's revenue collection, especially the tax collection, have turned out to be better than budgeted. So the government is having a vision of making India Vikasit Bharat, that means developed India by 2047. That means it is envisioning India as prosperous Bharat in harmony with the nature, with modern infrastructure and providing opportunities for all citizens and all regions to reach their potential. So these slogans, this vision of the government, you can directly quote in your conclusion of your answers or in your essay writing as well, right? So this is how the budget document comes handy in your answer writing, in your essay paper. Okay, please note these facts under the respective headings in your notebooks so that you inculcate these points while your while writing your test series or in the main examination. So this is the overview of the budget highlights which we have already discussed. So thank you so much, and the short notes of this video discussion will be provided in our Telegram channel. The link for joining the Telegram channel will be provided in the description box. Please do join us and have those updates, okay, those short notes of the video discussion. Until then, goodbye, take care, happy learning.